before I had children, I would see other people having kids, or maybe like celebrities having kids, and then just like 2 weeks later, they're like, doing their thing, looking the same way they did before they had kids. And I'm like, oh, so we can just do that. Okay, cool. Kids is just, you can just do that with a kid. And it's like, no, Mina, that's not it.
No, Mina.
I was so clueless.
But that's the image, right? That we're fed, that it's like, you should not only maybe look the same, but you should look better than you did before you had a baby. Hi, I'm your host, Justine Oxoy, and this is the Pleasurehood podcast, a podcast where we explore what it means to be a mother, a leader, and all-around badass from a place of pleasure, empowerment, and turn on. I am here to revolutionize how humans experience sex, pleasure, and motherhood by normalizing self-care, normalizing having desires, and normalizing mothers as sensual and sexual beings. Quick side note, you don't have to be a mother in order to listen to this podcast. Though I create my work with mothers in mind, this conversation is for everyone. I truly believe that pleasure is one of many paths of healing, and I'm here to highlight how to walk that path, no matter who you are. It is my deepest desire that wherever you find yourself on this amazing journey we call life, you can experience your power, your turn on, and of course, orgasmic pleasure. Welcome to episode 4 of the Pleasurehood podcast. In this episode, I had the immense pleasure of sitting down with the amazing Mina Aidoo. Mina Aidoo is a healer, embodiment coach, artist, poet, and trained professional dancer and choreographer. Her story involves turning down a West End world tour to find herself spiritually, drinking plant medicine, shaving her head, learning all about sacred sexuality, healing her mother wound, releasing a book of poetry, and so much more. Her book, Inky Black Woman, went to #1 on the Amazon African Literature chart. All right, let's celebrate that for real. I titled this episode Motherhood, a Reclamation, because motherhood gets to be an experience of your own making. We get to shape and mold motherhood in our own image, one that leaves us feeling deeply connected to ourselves, our bodies, and families. During our conversation, Mina and I explore what happens when you don't have the capacity for sex as a parent, and how to co-create a sexual relationship with your partner. Also, let's begin to normalize having periods of time of no sex in a relationship, right? We talk about that as well. We talk about the importance of trauma resolution and nervous system healing, being able to co-regulate with your child, and having emotional awareness of what's happening inside the body when your child is acting out. I am personally going through the terrible twos with my son, and let me tell you something. Just being fully aware of the sensations that are happening inside of my body when he is acting out and screaming and crying for no goddamn reason. It has been so helpful just to be able to acknowledge those sensations and acknowledge the fact that I feel angry or sad or frustrated, and allowing that to be okay. We also talk about why giving sensations and emotions in your body language can be transformative, and how to practice putting yourself first even when you feel dysregulated, numb, or burned out. The importance of community and creating a network of support. Like, this is so important to talk about because so often motherhood can feel so lonely, and you can feel like you're all by yourself trying to figure all of this stuff out. But being in community with other mothers or just other friends who may not be parents yet, but can provide you with support is so deeply important. And then we talk about the grief of becoming a mother and releasing expectations of what your motherhood was supposed to look like, which I had to do and continue to do. I've had to release exactly like what I thought motherhood, parenthood was going to look like for me. And that has been really cathartic and like really sad at the same time. But it's allowed me to enjoy who I am as a mother and a parent right here, right now, in the present moment. And lastly, we talk about the power of working with the timeline of your body when it comes to sexuality. I know personally, I've been doing this for the past 2 years. And that kind of looked like me not being a very sexual person, which kind of feels weird considering that I talk a lot about sensuality, sex, and pleasure. But I think it's important to define what sexual expression means to you. Because if you go off of what society thinks like sexual expression is or isn't, it can make you feel like, you're doing shit wrong and that you should be a more sexual person when actually you don't feel sexual at all, but you feel more into your sensual body or your more intimate body. And it looks like being, held and kisses and hugs than actual sex. If you haven't listened already to my podcast episode about sexual cycles, I invite you to go back and listen to that. It's a very beautiful, powerful episode that will kind of give you this deeper understanding that our bodies and our sexuality goes through natural cycles. All right. So with that, I invite you to get cozy and prepare yourself for such a wonderful, beautiful conversation with Mina. I literally could have had a 2-hour conversation with Mina. She is just such a beautiful human being, and having conversation with her just like lit up my soul in so many ways. And she just drops wisdom bomb after wisdom bomb. So enjoy it. And yeah, you are in for a really yummy treat. Hello, Mina. I am so excited to have you. And I feel like we've been internet lurking one another. I feel like I find myself in the same spaces as you, but haven't really had an opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with you. So thank you for joining me for the Pleasurehood podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh. Y'all don't even know. We have been probably chatting for like a half hour already about motherhood and just our experiences as mothers and how it does relate to our work and how maybe it doesn't. And we're still kind of putting the pieces together. But one, I would just love to hear just your personal journey with your work, what brought you into it. And yeah, as a trauma resolution practitioner, how does your work meld into being a mother, if it even does?
Yes, thank you. So the way I got into the work, very sort of basically, was wanting to heal sexual trauma and sexual wounding. That was my way in. And I know you're a beta coach. And so, there's already stuff. And I'd done a lot of online sort of courses, and I've been to workshops and learned practices, around the sexual healing. And I found that like I wasn't really getting the results that I was wanting. I was doing a lot of it sort of on my own. And so I did so many things. There's a lot of people that work with me, especially in terms of like pleasure and sexual healing. There's always this like list of like so many things that they've done. Like, because you're looking around, looking for the thing that's going to help, right? I think sex is like a real barometer. It's a real sort of mirror. You can really see if it's working for you or not. Like it's quite clear usually. And oftentimes it's not in some way. And so it's kind of really easy to see, oh, okay, I want some support in this area or some help in this area. Or I just want to have sex in the first place, maybe. That's where a lot of that, right? That would be great. Can you help me with that, please?
Exactly. It's like, can we just start? Can we just start there?
Oh, yes. And so that was where I started. And over time, these practices that I'd done and these things that I'd done, these courses and these retreats and these workshops, although great, there was something deeper underneath that I needed to get to before any of these things were going to work for me. And so slowly, I sort of gravitated towards the trauma resolution work. And that's what I found has been, it's worked on such deep levels. And when I say deep levels, it's like the way that I am with myself, the way my body, like the way my nervous system is moment to moment, it's helped to kind of reset that and ground that and heal that. And my system just become much more fine-tuned and much more sensitive and much more able to be with what is. And it's really built capacity to be with what is, to be with the stresses and strains of life, to be with the reality of what it means to be a Black woman, do you know what I mean, in the world, to be with the reality of what it means to be in a relationship, you know, to be with all the ups and downs of life. And when you're trying to have sex or good sex and your system's kind of like, you can't see this, but I'm doing some strange kind of like jerk robot motions. When you're adding these really like intimate and actually having good sex takes a huge capacity in the body. And most of us are walking around with very low capacity. And then add on top of that, like parenting a small human, where's the capacity for that, right? We have the capacity for ourselves, let alone to be with these huge life, you know, experiences, amazing experiences, but it's, you know, it's a real intimate thing. And there needs to be space in the body, capacity in the body to be with intimacy in that way. And so the trauma resolution work has really helped me heal the sexual wounding. So that's how I came to the work. And so the other question you asked me is how it relates to my motherhood journey. And I'm like, listen. Right now, like still figuring it out. My work is kind of like my other baby. So right now, my partner has my child and I'm doing this. And so for me, they're quite separate, actually. It takes capacity to be with the work. And so I kind of need all of me or what there is of me at the time to be with the work. And saying that, though, the results of the trauma resolution work have impacted my motherhood significantly, actually. Just because in terms of basic things like co-regulation with my son, being able to be with my emotions in a way that is healthy, modeling healthy regulation of emotions for him. And it's built capacity to be with him. I've built capacity for myself, which has allowed him to be with me and not feel like we're in an abusive relationship, you know, because I can kind of have some perspective. I have grounding tools. I have things that I can do to show up as a mother, which allow him to show up fully as himself and for me to be able to be with him as himself and not take anything he's doing as a personal attack or as trying to, you know, get on my nerves on purpose. It's not about that. And actually, there's a level of the work that I'm still in training on. This piece is, the whole thing is a whole journey anyway, but the pre and perinatal aspects of how the body forms and the birth and the pre-birth and the ancestral pieces are really beautiful parts that come in And I can see in him those pieces as they're coming in. There's a spiritual aspect to the work, which is just beautiful. And because the work isn't just the present moment, it's like all along the timeline. So it's ancestral, it's generational, traumatic imprints that may have happened at any point in someone's life or previous lives, going back. So being with my son, there's a new layer of depth that is coming in as I continue to go deeper with the trauma resolution work that I do.
Mm. Oh my gosh, that's so good. And I resonate with so much of what you're saying, from sex and having the capacity for sex, especially as a parent and while you're parenting, and also what that looks like in relationship to my husband and being able to co-create that together. I mean, that in itself, I feel like could be a whole podcast episode. And I definitely want to get back to that, because one of the things that I think is really important to discuss in these conversations of kind of like reclaiming motherhood is also like reclaiming your sensual and sexual self at the same time, because you are always a sensual and sexual creature, and it can feel so far away once you become a mother or a parent. So I definitely want to come back to that piece. But one thing that really hit me of the importance of trauma resolution, nervous system healing, is being able to co-regulate with your child, and also being able to have that emotional, I don't want to say control, that's a lack of a better word, awareness, emotional awareness inside of what's happening inside your body when they are having a tantrum or they're saying no to something. And you just like, deep inside, you just want to like be like, what is wrong with you? Like, why are you testing me? But I have found, because I have been doing like this deep embodiment work and deep healing of just understanding like what is happening in my body, like what are these sensations I'm experiencing in my body, and also being able to give it language has been so important. And I saw how it like just transformed my relationship with my husband. But like, I see how it actually allows me to show up as my best self in my relationship with my son and mothering. Because if I hadn't have done all of this work before becoming a mom, I would have taken so many things personally. I would have been like, what am I doing wrong? Why is he acting like this? What can I do better? I probably wouldn't even trust myself like I do to like make the right choices, or trust that like, the choices might be right in this time, and we'll see, what happens down the road. But this is what I know is the best action plan for myself, for my son, for my family. And it's been a really beautiful experience of just like what I'm capable of as a human. And it's still unfolding, right? It's not like I don't have days where I get upset, or he is just like working my last nerve. And I am just like, Arda, I need to take a break. And in those times, to be honest with you, I've been like, I need to go for a walk. I need to leave this space, because I am going to explode if I don't leave this situation. Or I've been like, all right, here's a boundary. This is where I need support. And I go to Doan, my husband. I'll be like, Doan, listen, I need you to help me with X, Y, and Z, because I have reached my mental, emotional, and physical capacity for this. And I really need your support. So it's really allowed me to practice a level of deep self-care, if not self-devotion, because in my mind, and it's something I'm still practicing, because it's hard, especially in society, because society will be like, what are you talking about? But I've really been practicing putting myself first, because if I am dysregulated, if I feel disconnected, numb, burnt out, I am no good to my family unit whatsoever.
Right. Yes. 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 I would love for you to just talk about like what does putting yourself first like look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I was about 3 months postpartum, so first of all, I didn't really believe in like using pleasure as a path to healing. I was just like, that is just a bunch of mumbo jumbo. I don't know what these people are talking about. You're crazy. Pain is the path to healing. And then you get to experience pleasure.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until until I had Arda and I was like 3 months postpartum, I was like, oh, I have to feel good. Like the whole point of this is to feel good, because if I don't feel good, then this isn't going to work. So I worked out with Doan where I was like, listen, during these hours, I need time to myself. I need to go for my morning walks because my health was like a huge issue after I gave birth. So I was like, I need to go for my morning walks. And sometimes I would take my dogs, sometimes I was just by myself, but it really just allowed me to center myself in the morning. And then I come back and I would have like energy and the capacity to take care of my son. And then another one was like I made sure I had food delivery because I was like, I'm not cooking. I don't have time to plan out healthy meals. So I set up it was kind of expensive food delivery, but I was like, this needs to happen. This is on the top of my list. I made sure to like take baths. I made sure to have moments of practicing pleasure where it was just like moving my body and dancing. And it was just like these really small ways of just practicing putting my well being above everyone else's, that it just slowly became this way of being. Now it's not perfect. I still fall into like the trap of like being like, okay, all of these other things need to get done before I can take care of myself. And it doesn't mean that I end up at the bottom of my list, because I do sometimes. But then I have, whenever I feel jealous of Doan, because Doan is a master at putting himself first. He is a master of it. And so whenever I find myself getting jealous of that or just feeling like resentful towards him, I'm like, oh, it's because I've put myself at the bottom and it's time that I go back to the top of my list again. So, yeah, even just making time to hang out with friends. I did an overnight hotel stay, not very far from home, but I like found this like really beautiful hotel and I just ordered room service. I like watched movies. I drank, a couple of glasses of nice wine and just like really just luxuriated in the fact that I was by myself for the first time ever. So,
That's amazing.
yeah. Yeah. Do you find it hard to put yourself first, or is it something that you're able to regularly practice?
You know what? I work with a lot of Black women, and there's something about having support which comes up a lot, like being able to access support, like knowing, like I grew up watching my mother do everything on her own. And so it's like, it was not modeled to me that anyone was there to help or anyone would want to help, right? Or that I could find help. And then the next layer was like, if I don't have any money, how do I do this? It's like, and so I was always quite triggered when I saw moms who like had nannies like in the first bit, or like they had money to have nannies or they had money to do these things, because it's like money was really tight for us, especially having a child. And My partner works and I'm sort of like have my business, which is still building. And it's like, how can I put myself first if there isn't anyone around me to support me, you know? And so I had to really look at that and work that out and like actively try to find people and actively build a network. And oftentimes I think in the coaching space, we talk about, but do you have support? Like get support. And it's like, what if you don't have money? Or what if you don't have people? It's like, how do you get support? You know? And so I've kind of been thinking about that with my clients. And there is definitely something about doing the excruciatingly painful thing, oftentimes, of having to just ask anyone, like getting used to asking people, you know, go asking the mum in the playground that you don't even know, and just really putting yourself forward and just trying to build that network if you don't have it, or trying to build that village if you don't have it. And that can be a process of trial and error. And then like getting to know my neighbours to see if someone would watch my kid. It's really helped to sort of root me in a way because I've had to branch out and ask people around me for help. My partner's quite good. I have a partner who can take Apollo, but I don't have grandparents. I don't have extended family. So it's been really difficult. Before I had children, I would see other people having kids, or maybe like celebrities having kids, and then just like 2 weeks later, they're like, you know, doing their thing, looking the same way they did before they had kids. And I'm like, oh, so we can just do that. Okay, cool. You know, kids is just, you can just do that with a kid. And it's like, no, no, Mina, that's not it.
No, Mina.
I was so clueless.
No, but that's the image, right? That we're fed, that it's like, you should not only maybe look the same, but you should look better than you did before you had a baby.
And now you should be happier because you have a baby.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you should be happy and fulfilled, and you should look amazing, and like life should just go back to what it was.
Right. And wrong. Like wrong. That's not how it works. And I think we do such a disservice because the dominant narrative is bullshit. And not only that, but like every parent is going to parent differently. Every mom is going to mum differently. And this is what I have realized is that, you know, when people say, you know, do what you think is best for your family, do what's best for you, great. Because we're all working with ancestral patterning, you know? So me growing up, it was quite hard. My mum struggled. My dad wasn't really the most hands-on person. And me going into having kids, I wasn't sure if I wanted to have kids. And then there was a whole process. It was a very strange process of not knowing if I wanted to have kids. And then and then having IVF, and then it working, and me being in shock that it actually worked. So it was kind of like, there's this very strange kind of weird out of order process how my son came to be. One day I'll talk about it. And so because of watching how my mum grew up, how my mum mothered, and then not knowing if I wanted kids, like when Apollo came, I was very much like, and because of the work I do, I was very much like, what felt right to me was to just like attach him. And so I breastfed because I had the support to breastfeed. I'll say it like that. I had people who supported me to get that breastfeeding going, and it happened. And to this day, he's still asking for, he's almost 3, and to this day, he's still asking for booby. So and like we co-sleep and I wore him, you know, and the way I did motherhood, not knowing if I wanted to have a kid in the first place, it was very much on me because I worried there was some part of me which was playing a pattern of, because I was not attached to my own mum. And so I'm working with trying to build attachment with my child. And this is the way it felt to do it. And so whether it's conscious in me or whatever it is, I'm parenting following ancestral healing lines, you know what I mean? And so and everyone is doing that. And so when, you know, when mothers judge other mothers, or we, you know, we talk about it, it's like, no, everyone is doing things consciously and unconsciously, whether they know what they're doing or not. And so you saying putting myself first, it's like, I would love to put myself first. And this was the parenting that felt instinctual to me, which when your child is attached to you 24/7, it's very hard to put yourself first, right? And so there's so many things at play, you know, that we're conscious to us and unconscious to us, that we're with the whole complex thing of it. Like, I can know in my head, yes, I must put myself first. And this is the parenting that I'm not even choosing. It's just, this is what feels right to me to do. So we're just being with all those different layers all the time as we're parenting. So it's not clear cut, I think is my answer. It's a lot of different things at the same time that we're working with, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because I feel like putting yourself first can look different for everyone. Like the examples I gave, someone could be, that doesn't sound like you putting yourself first, you know? That just sounds like a normal day. But for me, that was like revolutionary, like to go for a walk without my baby with me, and having just a half hour, 45 minutes to myself just felt so nurturing, right? And you practicing asking for support in a way is putting yourself first. Like asking for help is acknowledging that you have a need that needs to be fulfilled. And this is the way that that need is going to be fulfilled, is by creating a network of support that wasn't there before. And for other women, it is, you know, or other parents, it could be going for religiously going out of town for a week without their kids, you know, and just being like, I just need to not be mom for a whole week and just be myself. And I love that you said that it's everyone following consciously and unconsciously familial or ancestral pattern that needs to be healed within inside of themselves. And I think when we look at it that way, it opens up so many possibilities of what mothering and parenting can look like for you, and not according to, you know, celebrities or what mothering and parenting is supposed to be because society told us this is how we've done it and this is how we're going to continue to do it. You really get to reclaim your experience for yourself. And I think that is so important, not only for the mother or the parent. I think it's really important for the children as well, because they get to see their parent like thriving on their own terms, you know? And I think that is so important, because what you shared about your mom, I resonate with my mom. You know, my parents got divorced when I was young, and my mom was the sole provider and parent of myself and my brother. And I know she did the best that she could, but it's like we moved from Colorado, where we had friends and family, to Virginia, where we knew no one. And my mom had to make an effort similar to how you made the effort of finding that support, creating that support system. And not only for her, but I see now for us too. So she could thrive and we could thrive as well in our own way. Yeah, I love having that conversation, because I feel like motherhood and parenting has become so, like, there's just one way to do it. There's just one way to be it. And if you're not that, then you're doing it wrong, or there's something wrong with you. And so you have so many people walking around wondering, like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I figure this thing out?
Exactly. It's just so, I can't believe we're still doing this in 2022. We're still doing this to ourselves. Like, ugh. But hopefully conversations like this, you know, are helping to bring new perspectives to light and new stories. And I wanted to say, actually, there's one thing I wanted to mention, just how like grief can play into this. Because I know that there there are people who want their motherhood to be a certain way, or who wish it was a certain way. And it's not that way. It's not turning out that way. And I just want to mention that because, yes, there are things we can do. There are things that we are doing consciously and unconsciously. And it is the way it is, a lot of the times. Like I know mothers who really didn't want to work. They wanted to be stay-at-home mums, but they have to work. Or they wanted to work, but they have to be stay-at-home mums. Do you know what I mean? There's so much life that gets in the way. And so this idealized narrative, or they become single moms, or things happen in the relationship. We have so many idealized narratives of what this should look like and how it should go. And life is life, and all we can be is with what's happening in the moment. And so having the ability and the capacity to be with the grief when your motherhood is not how you want it to be, and being able to be with that is I just want to touch on that, acknowledge that that's often a part of this.
Yeah, thank you. I completely agree. There's so much grief that happens when you become a mother and a parent, because there's a lot of letting go of, as you said, like what you think was going to happen, how you expected things to happen. For me, I wanted to breastfeed until Arda was like not interested anymore, like it would be a dream if he came up to me and was like, Mom, like I want your boob. And that was something I had to grieve because, one, I had a really hard time breastfeeding, and it was during COVID lockdown. So I couldn't find someone who could support me in like the lactation process and in the breastfeeding process. And I had postpartum preeclampsia after I gave birth. So I had blood pressure issues, and they had to switch me to a medication that I couldn't breastfeed on. So I literally had to stop breastfeeding like overnight. And because I called my cardiologist and was like, my blood pressure is just still so high all the time. And he's like, well, we're going to have to like take you off your current medication and switch you to one where you can't breastfeed. And I was so heartbroken. And, in hindsight, maybe I would have navigated that a little bit differently. But at the time, it's like I was so there's like hormones, I want to keep myself alive for my child. So there was that factor. So I was just like, all right, like do whatever you have to do to keep me healthy, keep me alive. And so, yeah, that was something I had to grieve, of just like this dream of being able to breastfeed my baby as long as I possibly could. And that was like cut short, like overnight. And so I think that that's a really important thing to bring up, that this journey involves a lot of grief and releasing and letting go. And I kind of like wanted to circle back around to the sexual part of mothering and parenting, and having the capacity to even have a sexual relationship with yourself or with a partner, and how that is a part of grieving and letting go as well. Like knowing your sexual self before baby, and realizing that your sexual self is completely different after baby, like no matter what that looks like maybe you become more sexual, or maybe you were super sexual and you're like, do not touch me after you have a child, and navigating that. And I'm curious to know like what that look like for you, if you're open to sharing.
So I came to the trauma resolution work that I do, to heal sexuality. So I had some experiences in my early 20s which kind of really shut me down sexually. And actually there's also like some childhood stuff and like generational stuff which didn't help as well. It was a bit of a mess, as we often are. So I can't say I was like super sexual before I had my kid. And I definitely was not super sexual after I had my kid. so, so it's been a lot of like navigating it with my partner, and he's amazing, and he has been exactly the person that I needed. And like, it's not necessarily, but it's been I used to try and get him to come to all these like workshops with me and all these, do all these courses with me. And then at some point it was just like, oh, this is not working. He's not really into it and it's not working. And so I realized that it should be a journey that I take for myself and, with myself. And he supported me. And we just didn't have sex for like a long time. You know what I mean? Like I needed to just not have sex for a long time. My body needed to know on a deep level that not having sex was okay. The trauma happens when it's too much too fast, right? So my body was just totally getting triggered, or what to say, we call it a threat response in trauma resolution work. My body was going into response every time it linked a threat response to being sexual with a partner. And so I had to understand that actually the two, we call it uncoupling, the two things can be uncoupled. And so he was just really great at giving me all the time and space. And we're talking about like a long time. Like, people say to me, oh, I haven't had sex for 3 months. I'm like, you can't see me, but I'm making a face. And 3 months might be a very long time for you, but I'm talking like, I think people don't talk about this, but it's very common to not have sex for like a couple of years. Like It's really, really, really common. So anyone that thinks that, oh no, I haven't had sex for this amount of months, it's like, it's not uncommon at all, especially after you have a kid. But my body just needed time to uncouple the threat from, being sexual, and just to find its own sort of like balance point, and then to start from ground zero and build up again, build up a different experience, for it to have a different sequence of events that was learned as pleasurable rather than in a threat response. That took time, and that's definitely the work that I've been doing. So it's really, really helped. Like some of the workshops and the jade egg stuff that I've done have been great. But if at a deep level your body is associating sex with threat, no amount of jade eggs is really gonna gonna fix that. So the work I do, it's really slow. It happens over time, and there's definitely like a patience to be with it. But the thing about it is, there's a time element with trauma. It's like it happens in the moment and things get stuck. So when we allow the body to have its own timing and find its own right time, that's when we can release patterns that have got stuck in the body. And so with sexuality work, it's great, but there's no like 5 steps. It's not a linear process. And the trauma resolution work can be really great if you're someone who has tried all the things but haven't really got the results you wanted. Was that the question you asked me? I can't even remember.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't either, but it's really...
I think I went off on a tangent, but there we go.
No, it's so good. And it brought up so much for me because, me and my husband haven't had sex for around 2 years either. And
for saying that, like, let's normalize it.
Yeah, I completely agree. It is, 1, it's normal. And 2, there's nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. And 3, you really have to, like you're saying, it makes total sense of working with the timeline of your body, which is not linear whatsoever. And I do find in a lot of sexuality work that it's like, step 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you're ready to like have this orgasmic spiritual experience.
Right.
And when that doesn't happen, you start to think like, oh, it's not working. What's wrong with me? And I've seen this a lot in those spaces where a lot of individuals start to question their process and that they're broken. And it's like, no, this is not a linear journey whatsoever. And you're going to keep coming up with layers and layers and layers of resistance. And sometimes you'll be like, oh, I'm so good. I'm having the type of sex that I want. And then you might hit another roadblock that you did not see. And you're like, oh, shit. All right, this is coming up. Okay, I realize that there's more healing to do, and that is fine. Healing is a journey. And I think that in itself needs to be normalized. It's not a destination that we're trying to get to. And it's something I have to remind myself constantly of. And one thing I had to get honest about with myself was that I was having pain during sex. And because I was like in the sexuality space, I was like, and teaching it and coaching around it, I was like, oh, like I felt like this dirty little secret of mine of like, oh, but I'm having pain during sex. And finally, literally just recently, I was like I'm having a really hard time with pain during sex. And even when there is an attempt to have sex, it's like it's shut down by my body because it's just too painful. And I sought out a pelvic floor physical therapist, and I had my first session with them just a couple weeks ago. And it was like the most validating experience that I've had of just being like, one, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. Two, this is so common. And it just felt good to like just going to see someone who's like, all right, I'm going to give you some tools and some exercises, and this is our goal. And, like, let's just see where this takes us. And it really felt powerful to be like, okay, I am doing something about my sexual health, my sexual wellness outside of just trying almost kind of like sexualizing myself and turning myself into like this idea of like what like being sexy was. It's like, oh no, actually taking care of my pussy is actually really sexy and sexual. And she's like, finally, bitch, like you finally listening to me.
Yes, yes. And I love what you mentioned about like, you said about your dirty little secret, like, because you're coaching and teaching on it and having this thing happen at the same time. Like, I think it's so liberating for you to say, for people to understand, like, what it really is, because people don't talk about it honestly enough at all. I don't think there's this image that everyone's like, swinging from the chandeliers, having the sex, and maybe some people are, and that's great. I'm like, yes, for you if you're doing that. And there are a lot of people who are not doing that.
Mm. Yeah, we're not superhumans. We don't have it all together. We're still trying to figure this out too. But this is what I have figured out. And here are some tools that have supported me. And just sharing some of my story and being honest about certain things that have happened in my journey that were probably not sexy and, not the image that you have as someone who teaches sexuality and sensuality and embodiment, but it's relatable. And I think that should be our goal, is to be like, no, you're normal. Like, and you're not broken. You're okay. And there is a path to healing, and you can walk it at your own pace, so important.
Definitely, definitely. And what I notice is that, especially if you're like someone who works with the body, like the body is nature. The body is not a man-made thing, right? And so it doesn't work on linear time, circular, like the moon, tides. You have these kind of cycles, right? But then when you're in the capitalist, patriarchal, world of business and marketing, I see that, the marketing of the healing work bumps up against the actual experience of the body. So people want these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps, and that's what's clear. And they want to know, okay, if I give you this money, I'm going to get this. That's not how, in my experience, deep healing has happened for me. Like, maybe that exists. I have not found that thing, if that is out there. What I have found is support and people who can support me as I go on my journey and share tools and actually co-regulate and understand something of where I'm at, which has helped my body to then come to new awareness and over time let old things go. And that's where I found really sort of like value and actually lasting healing, not just like a cathartic release, but it's been transformation over time in the body's right timing. And that's what's been really key.
Yeah. Which I find is kind of like what you want, to be honest, because then it becomes a way of being and not, you're like, oh, I'm going to lose 10 pounds, but the lifestyle change doesn't come with that. And then you lose the 10 pounds just to gain it back. And it's like, no, it's not about losing 10 pounds. It's about the lifestyle change. It's about the healthy relationship to your body, to food, to yourself, to your environment. It's like all these other things have to change. And I think that can be jarring to people, especially when it comes to embodiment work and sexuality work, because you realize that in the healing process, all of these things around you have to transform with you. And that can be a lot for people. And it's so much more sexier just to be like, oh, I'm going to do this 5-week program. And at the end, like, I'm just going to be like having sex like a champion. And, and instead, you might like unearth all of these wounds and traumas that you have never really took the time to acknowledge or wanted to acknowledge. And I think it finds a lot of people in this space of like, what the fuck did I just sign up for? Like I was signing up to feel good, not to feel like crap. Not to say like it's always feels like crap, but there are like I was having this conversation with someone before where it's like at the beginning, healing is so euphoric. And it's like, oh, you're making all these like changes. And then you going through the tunnel and you realize it's like, huh, it's getting a little dark in here. You're like, where am I? Did I take the wrong turn?
It's a lot, and I think we're so conditioned. We've been marketed to. We're sold that there is this. Give me this money, I'll give you this result. But that's not, in my experience, how it works at all. And I think it takes a whole, perspective shift, a paradigm shift to understand how the body works. This is what I talk about a lot. Like, there's a whole paradigm shift that has to happen before we understand that the body is not included, it's not part of the way that works. We're not valuing cycles, we're not valuing, it's all part of that we don't value. We don't understand body's time, we don't understand nature's time, we don't understand cycles, we don't understand yin, we don't understand softness, we don't, there's a whole shift. Anyway, I could talk a long time about that, but yeah, I think you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, it's so good. And Mina, I feel like I could just keep talking to you forever.
Let's do a series. We can do a series.
Yeah, I'm just like, you have to come back. Like, you really do. I think a part of me just feels like I've just scratched the surface with you and just the depth of conversation that we could have around. I mean, we haven't, I so wanted to touch upon just like experiencing the experience of being a Black mother, especially to like a little Black boy, and just navigating that and navigating, sorry, I'm just looking at my list because there's just like so much. And like also what it means as like a Black mother or parent to like revolutionize how we mother and parent. Because I feel like that is a really important conversation culturally. It's just different. It is just like, it just is. And so, oh my gosh, no, I'm totally going to have you back if you will come.
So, me. I will come.
Oh, awesome. But in the meantime, where can we find you? Are there any programs that you want to share with us?
Yes. So you can find my website is www.minaaidoo.co.uk. It's MINAAIDOO.co.uk. I'm sure Casey will link it in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll leave it in the show notes.
I was saying show notes. Yes, and you can my work is there. I do workshops, I do groups. I'm about to launch a workshop series, and the first one is going to be happening in August, and it's called Clear and Calm in Times of Overwhelm. So I know a lot of people struggle with overwhelm, and I'm teaching how to have a simple nervous system practice that I'll walk you through that you can go to anytime you're experiencing feelings of overwhelm. And the why I'm doing this, even though I do, sexual healing work, ancestral work, is because overwhelm is something that we sort of know that we have. We just feel all over the place, right? It can be a real way in to deeper nervous system work. But it's also a quick win for you for when you're in that place. You can have a quick practice to go to. So that can be like a little tool that you can have if you want to come and learn. And that's happening in August, hopefully, if it ends up happening. You know how these workshops are. You know how these online coaches are. You know how these mothers are. We'll see if it happens. It's going to happen. But just go to my website. The best thing you can do, actually, see, I'm not doing this very well. The best thing you can do is to sign up to my mailing list. That is the best thing you can do to find out more about me. And that is at www.minaaidoo.co.uk. And then definitely when the workshop is ready, you will hear about it.
Yes, I love it. And also I will love to share it too whenever it's ready, because I truly see the value in your work, in your wisdom, and I just love you. I loved you before from far away, but now that I've gotten to experience you, I love you even more. So
I'm getting a big head. I feel so flattered. Thank you, Casey. Thank you. I must say, I love you too. I've enjoyed this immensely.
Oh.
It's been so fun.
Oh. Well, beautiful people, definitely go check out Mina and her work. And until next time, stay wild, sexy, and free. Thank you for joining another episode of the Pleasurehood podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to my conversation with Mina. Mina is currently teaching women and femmes how to access the hidden power of their bodies so that they can heal trauma, reconnect to their sexuality and sensuality, reclaim their wildest desires, and fully step into their pleasure and purpose. She offers one-on-one sessions, groups, and workshops. You can sign up for a free 10-minute embodiment practice at Mina, MINA Aidoo.co.uk. You can find a link to her website in the show notes. If you're new to the Pleasurehood podcast, first of all, welcome. And if you liked what you heard and you want to connect with me more, you can listen to past episodes, follow me on Instagram at Justine Oxoy, and also drop into my YouTube channel, aptly named Wild Sexy Free. If you're an Apple Podcast user, you can support the podcast by leaving a review. All right, beauties, that's all I have for you today. I'm sending you so much love, pleasure, and sexy vibes your way. And until next time, stay wild, sexy, and free.